Breaking news. Xiao Zhan in tears. Wang Yibo'S life in danger as doctor announces emergency surgery. The entertainment world was shaken to its core today when breaking reports revealed that Wang Yibo', 28, beloved actor, singer, and racing champion, was rushed into emergency surgery after a sudden medical collapse. What stunned fans even more was the heart-wrenching sight of Xiao Zhan, visibly pale, hands trembling, and tears streaming down his face as he was escorted into the hospital alongside Yibo'S stretcher. The usually composed actor could barely form words as photographers called out questions. "Please, just pray for him," Xiao Zhan managed to whisper, his voice breaking, before disappearing behind the hospital's secure doors. The collapse. Witnesses say Wang Yibo' had been filming a high-intensity action sequence on set when he suddenly clutched his side and stumbled. Crew members rushed forward, thinking he might have pulled a muscle. But within seconds, Yibo'S face had gone pale, his breathing shallow. Director Han Jiwoo shouted for medics. "He's not responding. Call an ambulance now," echoed across the set. Xiao Zhan, who had been visiting Yibo' that afternoon, was reportedly the first to reach his side, falling to his knees and grabbing Yibo'S hand. "Yibo', stay with me. Look at me." Xiao Zhan's voice cracked, panic etched on every line of his face. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but the urgency in their movements was unmistakable. They strapped oxygen over Yibo'S face and rushed him toward the ambulance, Xiao Zhan climbing in without hesitation. Hospital chaos. By the time they reached Beijing First Medical Center, the hospital's emergency wing was swarming with paparazzi, fans, and concerned colleagues. Security had to form a barricade as Xiao Zhan stepped out of the ambulance, supporting Yibo'S limp head in his arms until hospital staff took over. Inside, the tension was unbearable. Doctors moved with rapid precision, their curt instructions slicing through the silence. "BP is dropping. Prep for surgery immediately." One nurse, visibly shaken, whispered to another, "If we don't operate now, he might not make it." Xiao Zhan froze at those words, his breath hitching. "Operate? On what?" he demanded, his voice thick with fear. A senior doctor turned to him with a grave expression. "There's internal bleeding. It's severe. We need to open him up now." Xiao Zhan's breakdown. As Yibo' was wheeled toward the operating theater, Xiao Zhan tried to follow, but security held him back. "You can't go in there," they told him. That was when the dam broke. He pressed his forehead against the closed theater doors, shoulders shaking violently. "Please, don't take him from me." "Not like this," he whispered. Those who saw it later said it was the first time they had seen Xiao Zhan so utterly broken. He paced the hallway for minutes that felt like hours, at times collapsing into a chair, at times standing with his hands gripping his hair. Each tick of the clock was torture. The flashbacks. While waiting, Xiao Zhan reportedly kept mumbling fragments of memories. The two had been through years of public speculation, career pressures, and private disagreements, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of Yibo' unconscious in his arms. In one particularly chilling moment, a staff member overheard Xiao Zhan whisper, "You still owe me that race, remember? You promised you wouldn't leave until you beat me." It was as if he was speaking directly to Yibo'S spirit, willing him to hold on. Media frenzy outside. Outside the hospital, live broadcasts showed hundreds of fans holding candles and signs. "Stay strong, Yibo', and we're with you, Xiao Zhan." The atmosphere was a mix of grief and desperate hope. Reporters speculated wildly. Was it an accident on set? An underlying illness? Exhaustion from his relentless schedule? The truth was still unfolding, but one thing was certain. Yibo'S condition was critical. The doctor's statement. After what felt like an eternity, the hospital's chief surgeon emerged, his scrub stained, mask pulled down. The crowd fell silent. Cameras clicked. Xiao Zhan stepped forward, eyes searching the doctor's face for answers. "We're taking him into emergency surgery," the doctor announced. "There's significant internal damage. The next few hours will determine everything." When asked about the cause, the doctor declined to comment, citing patient confidentiality. Xiao Zhan's knees buckled slightly, and an assistant caught him before he could fall. Private moment before surgery. Just before they wheeled Yibo away completely, Xiao Zhan was granted a few seconds with him. He rushed to his side, gripping his cold hand. "Yibo, if you hear me, fight. I'll be right here when you wake up. Don't you dare make me wait forever," Xiao Zhan said, his tears falling onto the white hospital sheet. Yibo's eyelids fluttered slightly, or maybe it was just Xiao Zhan's desperate imagination, but it was enough to give him a shred of hope. Inside the operating room, accounts from medical staff. Once inside, surgeons worked quickly to locate the source of bleeding. Monitors beeped erratically, each alarm sending jolts of urgency through the team. "We're losing him," one nurse cried at one point, prompting a flurry of movement as the anesthesiologist adjusted oxygen levels. It was a battle. Every second counted. Outside, Xiao Zhan's vigil. In the waiting area, Xiao Zhan refused to leave. He sat hunched over, his hands clasped so tightly they turned white. Occasionally, he'd lift his head when footsteps echoed, only to sink back when it wasn't the doctor. At one point, he took off the bracelet on his wrist, a matching one Yibo had gifted him years ago, and held it against his chest. "If he makes it through, I'll tell him everything." No more holding back, he murmured to himself, unaware a nearby journalist had overheard. The turning point. 2 hours into surgery, the chief nurse stepped out briefly to retrieve supplies. She caught Xiao Zhan's eye and gave a small nod. "He's fighting," she said softly. That tiny sliver of good news lit something fierce in Xiao Zhan's eyes. He stood up and began pacing again, whispering under his breath like a mantra. "You're stronger than this. You always are. Come back to me." Flashes of the past. Friends close to the pair later revealed that Xiao Zhan had once confessed to fearing something like this. With Yibo's passion for high-risk activities, from motorcycle racing to intense stunt work, Xiao Zhan had begged him to slow down. Yibo had laughed it off. "If something ever happens to me," Yibo once told him, "promise me you won't cry too much. I'd hate to be the reason you stopped smiling." Those words haunted Xiao Zhan as the minutes dragged on. Surgery complete. At 4:12 p.m., the operating room doors swung open. The surgeon emerged again, looking exhausted. The crowd surged forward. Xiao Zhan was the first to speak. "Is he alive?" The doctor hesitated, then nodded. "He made it through surgery, but he's not out of danger. He's in the ICU now. The next 24 hours are critical." Xiao Zhan's knees gave way again, but this time he sank to the floor in relief, his hands covering his face as sobs racked his body. Thank you," he kept repeating. Xiao Zhan's longest night as Wang Yibo fights for his life. The clock on the ICU wall seemed frozen, the minute hand moving at a pace designed to torture anyone waiting for a miracle. Xiao Zhan sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, his trembling hands pressed together as if in constant prayer. Every beep from the monitors inside the operating wing sent his head snapping up. Through the glass panel, he could see a small portion of the bustling operating room. Figures in green scrubs moved like shadows, voices muffled but urgent. Xiao Zhan couldn't hear the words, but the speed of their movements told him everything. This was still a fight between life and death. The hallway scene that broke everyone. A nurse in her 20s approached with a clipboard, hesitating before speaking. "Mr. Xiao, would you like some water?" she asked gently. Xiao Zhan turned to her, his voice raw. "I don't want water. I want him back." The nurse bit her lip and nodded, retreating. Even the most experienced hospital staff weren't used to seeing someone this shattered. By now, crew members from Yibo'S current drama had arrived, their faces pale. One of them tried to comfort Xiao Zhan, placing a hand on his shoulder. But he barely reacted, his gaze fixed on the double doors that separated him from Yibo. Memories crashing in. In his mind, Xiao Zhan replayed the exact moment it happened on set. Yibo had been smiling minutes before, that cocky, effortless grin that always made Xiao Zhan roll his eyes but secretly adore him. They had been teasing each other about who would wrap filming first, and Xiao Zhan remembered joking, "Don't go doing any dangerous stunts without me watching." Now, the irony twisted like a knife in his chest. He had been watching, and it hadn't stopped anything. The first update. 2 hours into the surgery, the chief surgeon stepped into the hallway briefly, his gloves still on. Xiao Zhan was on his feet instantly. "We've controlled some of the bleeding," the doctor said. "But there's more damage than we anticipated. He's weak." The word weak felt like a blow. Xiao Zhan's jaw tightened, and he grabbed the man's arm. "You're not going to let him go. Do you understand? You can't." The doctor held his gaze for a moment, then nodded before disappearing back inside. The phone call. Back in the waiting area, Xiao Zhan's phone buzzed. It was Yibo'S mother, her voice trembling. "Xiao Zhan, is my son alive?" He swallowed hard. "He's fighting. They're doing everything they can." There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a quiet, "Stay with him. Don't let him be alone." "I won't," Xiao Zhan promised. The ICU preparation. Around 3:50 p.m., the hum of activity inside the OR changed. Nurses began wheeling equipment out. One caught Xiao Zhan's eye and said softly, "They're closing him up. He's going to the ICU." Relief should have rushed through him, but all Xiao Zhan felt was the weight of the words, "not out of danger." He knew the next stage was just as critical. The transfer. When they wheeled Yibo past, Xiao Zhan was finally allowed a glimpse. His heart twisted violently at the sight. Pale skin, oxygen mask, bandages visible beneath the gown. Wires everywhere. Instinct took over. He reached for Yibo'S hand, walking beside the moving bed. "I'm here," he whispered. "You made it this far. Don't stop now." Somewhere, deep inside, he swore he felt a faint squeeze back. The private vigil. Inside the ICU, Xiao Zhan took the seat right beside the bed and didn't move. He ignored the nurse's quiet suggestions to take a break. His eyes stayed fixed on Yibo'S chest, watching each rise and fall like it was the most important thing in the world. Occasionally, his hand would drift up to brush a stray strand of hair from Yibo'S forehead, his fingertips lingering. "You still look stubborn even like this," Xiao Zhan murmured, his voice almost a smile, but not quite. "If you think you're getting out of our next project together, you're wrong." A message to himself. At one point, Xiao Zhan pulled out his phone and opened the Notes app. He began typing, not for social media, not for the public, but for Yibo to read when he woke up. "You once told me I never say enough. So here it is. You've changed my life. I don't want to imagine a world without you. If you can hear me in there, fight your way back to me. I'm not done annoying you yet." When he finished, he stared at the words for a long moment before tucking the phone away. The nurse's observation. Around midnight, one ICU nurse quietly told a colleague, "He hasn't left his side once. Not even to eat." The other nurse glanced at the small vending machine coffee cup beside Xiao Zhan, untouched and cold. "He's running on love and fear," she said softly. "I just hope it's enough." The subtle sign. At 2:14 a.m., something happened. The faintest twitch of Yibo'S fingers against Xiao Zhan's hand. It was so small that anyone else might have missed it, but Xiao Zhan froze, eyes wide. "Yibo," he whispered, leaning closer. "Was that you?" There was no further movement, but he didn't care. For Xiao Zhan, that tiny twitch was proof. Yibo was still in there, still fighting. The final hours of the night. By dawn, the room was quiet except for the steady rhythm of the monitors. Xiao Zhan had drifted into an uneasy half-sleep, still holding Yibo'S hand, his head resting on the edge of the bed. The sunlight crept in through the blinds, casting a pale glow across Yibo'S face. In that fragile light, the scene looked almost peaceful. Two men, bound by something deeper than words, enduring the longest night of their lives together. And as the day began, the world waited for one thing: the moment Wang Yibo'S eyes would open again.